Uh, can everybody mute, please? Put your yeah. Okay. Okay. So first of all, the question is, who is the company's? What is company's? Who is the talent? By the way, can anybody answer this question? Who is talent? When you talk about talent strategy, what is talent or who is talent? What do you understand by word talent?
Sir, employees
Key performers actually, sorry.
sorry.
Yeah.
So Pawan Mishra, the key performer in the organization who play important role into company strategy and who actually are the achievers for the company and the kind of expectation company has.
Yeah. Anybody? Any other view? I think somebody else was also trying.
So according to me, talent is an aptitude or a skill. So anyone who has some talent, who has some skill or aptitude in certain area can be known as talent.
Okay, so that means now I'm getting two different answers. One answer is, and which is a fact, by the way.
Soman here, sir. Soman here, sir. May I focus on?
Yes, Soman, tell me.
Actually, talent is the available resource which we have already there. That is only the talent.
Who is the talent?
The available human resource.
So employees, human resource. Yes, you are right. Anybody else?
Yeah.
The talent is a natural aptitude to do a particular work without efforts. Like you gave an example of Sachin Tendulkar when it came to talent.
Yeah.
But in the context of company over here, right, Sonu?
Yeah. It's in the context of the company. So I think there are two kinds of views, and I think each company has these.
Actually, I think there is a different answer. You are asking who is talent, and others coming to what is talent. So there is a difference
both.
between who is talent.
What you the idea is, what do you understand by the word talent? It could be who, it could be what. Okay, so
then answers will be different.
So Soumya here.
Okay. Yeah, Soumya.
If it is who, the
So
answer
I
will
think
be different.
it is about knowledge, skills, and abilities. Because if somebody has the ability but does not have the knowledge, but we can kind of provide them through correct training. So I think that also is a talent, by polishing and ensuring that person comes out.
Let's look at the little more deeply. One view which somebody said in the beginning also, which is that a company feels that talent is a part of an elite. And the company says, for us, a talent is someone belonging to a selected elite. That means employees to whom we attribute the long-term potential to master challenges of strategic importance. You understand? That means if we call that person a talent, who we can say that he is going to tackle all the challenges and all that, which he is a person highly competent, and he is the person. So that is a elite. So that is one way of looking at. That means if you have a number of people in your employees, there could be some people who will probably will be qualifying this definition of talent, that they are highly skillful, highly competent, and they can give us the competitive advantage which we are seeking. That's one view. Okay, let's look second view. And some of you voiced this view also, that employees are talent. And a lot of company feel that every employee is a talent, and they have something they could be doing very well in some skills they may be having. So in the end, ultimately the organization is to discover talent, that good thing which they can do about it, develop it for the company, and use it to the best possible manner. So see, you can have two different kind of a definition and two different kind of organizations. And I can see that number of organizations, they believe that everybody in our company, if there are 1,000 people in our company, all the thousands are treated as talent, because each one of them would be good in some respect or the other. And if they're not good, so you may develop that goodness in him. So what do you feel? I mean, I raised the same question again. Is Sachin Tendulkar a talent?
Sir, he is a talent till the time he is able to contribute in the team and able to achieve
Yeah.
the team target. The time he is not able to
Okay.
achieve it.
So he then is not. But I think when he's playing, that means he's a talent. Now, when does a person get talent? When does a person get talent? Was he born with this talent, or he acquired it after I mean, in the childhood or something, when he started playing or something?
Sir,
When was that? Yeah.
talent, just if you're not taking it in the context of a company, talent can also, I mean, talent can be innate, inherent, developed and upskilled or upgraded as well.
So talent really means that you are pretty good at it, right? That's a very common understanding. Talent means if you have a talent in playing some musical instrument, that means you are pretty good at it. Yeah? So you're competent in playing that instrument. So Sachin Tendulkar, for example, when he was born and he was a very, very small child, he may not be able to play cricket, right? So he started playing cricket maybe at the age of 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, whenever. So, and that time he must not be very good, right? That time he must not be playing very well. So talent is something which is I mean, that competency, which ultimately we call it talent, that competency needs to be developed. So it has to be developed
It needs to
only.
be discovered and developed, right?
Yeah. So are you able to see my slide? No.
No, sir.
Okay. Let me start again on this thing, because I think suddenly my internet created some problem. And okay, let me continue in the meanwhile. So talent means you start, everybody learns the same way, everybody gets competency in the same way. So when you start, you are learning, you are developing your competence, and in the beginning you learned it very fast, and after some time it gets tapered off. So like supposing you get promotion, you get a new role, and that's time then you are able uh, to learn very fast, but then gradually you taper off. So over a period of time, this competency which gets increased and all that, but there is you can imagine there is a upper limit of the competency, okay, which everyone has, maximum level of competency which a person can have. So the potential is a gap between the current competency and the ultimate level which you could achieve. So now a person, when is each person has that limit of excellence is, which is supposed to be innate. And somebody's talked about that it is an innate capacity to really go to that extent of uh, business, of that competency. And a person has certain, and the potential is the difference between your current competency and that potential. Now the person who is a talented person will have much higher level of that maximum potential which he can achieve. Let me let me try again that my slides. Just one moment. Alok, can you? Uh, Alok, are you there? I'm not able to. Hello. I think the host has disabled my screen sharing. Let me call Alok. Alok, yeah, can you? It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you?
Sure, share now, sir.
I can. हाँ, दूसरा जो है ना वो कर देना. Okay, thank you, thanks. Yeah, sorry, you can see my slides now. Okay, so what I was talking to you about is remember that everybody start increasing the competence over the time, and it goes on increasing, but there is a maximum potential, which is for a talented person it is very high, and the difference between the maximum potential and the current competence level is a potential. So a person can go, a person who is like, and this maximum potential is different for different people, so supposing you take 10 people and start and they have never played cricket, for example, 10 people who have never batted in their lives, and now you start giving them one day's training, and at the end of the day, after the 1 day's training, there may be one or two people who are hitting the ball very nicely, they play very nicely, and that is where I think talent is. So talent means that you are able to learn much faster, and because your innate ability is that, so that is where I think that talent uh, is a thing. So now, I mean, how do you identify if I mean, most people are not able to really know where and how much is the maximum potential they have in a particular field. So if somebody knows uh, that I have a talent in this kind of a this thing, he will enjoy working, because uh, whatever talent, wherever he has a talent, and if he starts working in that area, he would enjoy. He would really enjoy. But the irony is that people have some talent, but they are unaware of it. They're unaware of it, and the organization also is not able to find out who is talent and who is not. But there is an effort which they make, and that effort is who identifies talent in the organization. It is a senior level team. One way is that, one view is that CEO and senior team, they have a periodical talent review kind of a meeting, and they call the person's boss and they start asking him about that guy and say, okay, is he a talent? Does he have, and how do you decide about the talent? There are three criteria: personality, performance, and motivation. The personality would mean that how does that person regulate himself? Is he a person who can be a role model? What is the kind of character? That's really personality attributes, whether he's able to uh, set himself as standard for the people working along with him. Second criteria is performance. Of course, performance has to be pretty good, and he has an extraordinary ability to meet challenges. That's easier to measure. If he can develop his performance with the time, is he can learn very fast. He can be a high performer. Third aspect, which is again very difficult to measure, but very important, is what his motivation. Is he passionate about something or not? Is he hungry to carry out that particular activity or not? So that is a third aspect. So with these three aspects, the CEO and senior team will like to review this and all that. There is another view that employee and company may take another view. Okay, they leave it to employees. Employees should recognize their special talent themselves, and if they recognize what they are good at, they should utilize the companies support activities to develop themselves, to grow that talent within themselves. So here in the second aspect is the second view or second philosophy of the company could be that, and this is consistent with the earlier view, that every employee is a talent. If every employee is a talent, let him discover himself, and company says that we will provide all the support for him to develop, to grow further and in the talent. So
So,
if you
so,
please
sir, I
please
just
ask
want
me.
to ask here, like when we are talking about recognizing a talent in an individual. So, is
Yeah.
there any some kind of psychometric tool or something like that through which, like as a manager, I can identify what is the hidden potential in my team member?
Yeah, the hidden potential, I mean, you will not be able to really find, but then these are the criteria. These three criteria will give you a fairly good idea. And if a personality, performance, and motivation. Now performance motivation is also, you can see that there is a 3 by 3 matrix. On one, this thing is performance, and potential means whether he's hungry, whether he learns very fast. And if he learns very fast and he's passionate, he's motivated, committed to perform, in that case, the difference between his highest maximum and the current is something which is high, and he is able to reach that. So in this, normally the boss and the senior review team will place people depending on the performance and depending on how motivated, committed, and passionate he is. On this basis, 3 by 3, and the person who has got a high performance and high potential, he is treated as. It is not very accurate way of doing it. You cannot really quantify the potential, or let's say this thing. So you can only categorize them into these 9 buckets which you are there, and then see that what you should be able to do it. So people who are having high potential but not a very high potential, and but performance wise they are not good, then you have to take certain measures. And people who are high performers but potential wise they are not, I don't think you can do too much about the potential part, but anyway you can facilitate at least to go high. You will very seldom find somebody who's got low potential and high performance. But then if he's there, you can probably increase his potential slightly by different initiatives that you can
Uh,
take in HR.
So,
Yeah,
just like a social styling, when we do a social styling, so
yeah,
we define the each individual character by the tool social styling.
yeah.
Similarly, like that tool, is there any kind of tool by which we can identify the potential of an individual?
See, for performance measurement, you have number of tools, right? When, but the motivation is something, or let's say how passionate he is or something. I'm not aware of any tool which can measure that. Okay, so
Okay.
it is mostly by the critical incidents, which the organization has faced with him, with that individual. So his boss will be able to judge how this person has been behaving in different kind of circumstances, and he can probably place a person in appropriately. However, I am not aware of any quantifiable tools which can measure the uh, really the motivation or passionate part of it. Okay, so you can have something about judgment. Through judgment you can find out about the guy's personality, and similarly for very critical incidents and how motivated he is, probably you can again have a judgmental view, but performance you can probably do it much more accurately.
Right, sir.
So, in key components for the talent strategy is, I mean, once we should be understanding the what do we mean by talent. Talent is something which we discussed. This thing it's not, and if your company is of the view that there are, let's say, out of 1,000 people there are about 20% are talent. So that is the one view which you can take. And talent acquisition, talent development, talent retention is the thing. You definitely need talent in the organization. You definitely need some people, and the more people you have who can term as talent, I think the organization is highly talented, and they probably have a much better chance to do very well in the business world. Okay, so talent acquisition is one. How do we acquire talent? You can acquire talent from outside the organization, or you can start developing certain people from within. Yeah, that is that's one. Talent development is something which is again this thing. But if you talk about so our strategy will consist of major three components: talent strategy, talent acquisition, talent development, and talent retention. Let's just go very quickly on the three aspects. Talent acquisition is something which, again, you remember this 2x2 matrix where I mentioned about the strategic relevance and talent availability. Normally the talent, if you are trying to acquire from outside, is going to be less and less available. So talent availability is normally elite or high performing individuals are normally not available. And even if they're available in the industry, they probably are sitting pretty somewhere else, and they may not be interested in coming over to your, I mean, it may not be easy. They will not reply to your advertisements and all that. They both may not be even looking at the job advertisements. So for such talent, and if that is a talent, for example, I'm looking at this particular uh, this one, that he's a highly important, strategic relevance is very high and availability is very low. Such a person on the right hand corner upper corner, he is not going to be responding to advertisements. So here in this case you probably will have to acquisition strategy will be executive search, or really it's a strategic hiring. And if there is a person who is not available, but then uh, you need a high quality guy, as I said, that some international lawyer, or having a guy who's an international contracts person or something. So in such cases, even if he's not that critical, but you may have to have a very specialized hiring also in this case. However, there are large number of people, if they are available in the availability is not very high there, but then they are less, they are highly important. You may have a referral kind of this thing where the community of those expertise will be able to find in their network some people, and they can refer such people to the organization that you can probably try and acquire them, and so on and so forth. So I think for talent acquisition, you
And now
don't really
one little question here. One little question
yeah
here. Sorry, one little question here.
yeah
The question is very simple. What really happens is, for example, when we are talking of talent acquisition, in some organization, somebody is excelling in his job, is very, very potential. So, some other organization knowing his potential, they pay him little money and oogie him to their own organization. Is that talent acquisition?
No, no, yeah,
That is
yeah,
talent acquisition?
talent acquisition is attracting the people who suit your, who's able to meet your requirement. Okay. Now, naturally, I said
Absolutely.
that good talent, the people who are valuable, they are valuable in most of the companies, and they are very nicely placed in most of the companies. Yeah. So it's very difficult to
Right.
really attract that such person to yourself. Now,
Right.
if you are able to attract him, I mean, your value proposition, your value proposition is such that he is able to come, and that means you acquired that guy. Now, the point is, after having acquired him, you have to retain him also, because somebody else may also be after that guy.
Right. That's a very, that's a very key point.
Yeah. So somebody else will also be interested in, your competitor may also be interested in acquiring that person. Okay.
Right.
So you have to retain him. So that's why talent acquisition normally is followed by talent development and talent retention, because it's another thing. Well, if a person can just be lured by higher money, then somebody else will also be ready to pay a little higher than you, and then he can lure him away. So the point is, such persons, if that money is the only criteria for their joining, that becomes difficult. So
Very
that
difficult.
he may not even stick with you for a very long time.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So talent development, of course, again, company can have two views. That as a company, one view is, as a company, we have responsibility to develop our talented people, most talented people. Or other view could be that responsibility of the development of employees lies with employees themselves, and we will only support all the developmental interventions we can give, but ultimately responsibility lies on the employees. So here, if your company feels that they are responsible, that they have certain development interventions which could be training, classroom training, job assignments, coaching, mentoring, or something like that. So there could be number of developmental intervention which are required for the talented people. And but some of them, I mean, all kinds of job assignments, coaching, mentoring, or training. Now, all these kinds of ways of development interventions, they have different impacts. I mean, they are like, for example, job assignment has been, by studies and by a lot of research and studies, they found that job assignments is the 70% effective, and it is the highest effectiveness is of job assignments. After 100 cases, 70 cases of the people, and the coaching and mentoring is 20%, and training itself is only about 10%. So you can see that effectiveness of your training intervention would be very high in case of job assignments, and coaching and mentoring probably will be 20%. Training session is good for knowledge and all that, but when it comes to competencies and all that, their job assignments and are the most effective. Okay, so that is another one. And then comes to talent retention. Talent retention strategies is one of the very very difficult, but then you have to have a number of interventions. One is conducive work environment. The environment in the culture, the environment has to be very conducive for the people to enjoy working in the organization. Second is motivational schemes, career path development. In case of talent, I think they get motivated, they stay with the organization if they can see that their career growth is very nicely chalked out. And succession planning. So these are some of the retention strategies which are there. So if you really see talent, again, if you want to build a talent strategy, the process is the same as we discussed in case of HR and training, that you have to start with the company's strategic intent, Then you have to also find out what are the talent related challenges which can help the company to have the competitive advantage and meet its objectives. What are the critical talent requirements? Identify the talent pool, the gaps which are there, and then use the various approaches to acquire, develop, and retain talent, keeping in mind, and that's very important, the structural and cultural context. You've got to understand the organization philosophy, an organization's culture, and then you then use the appropriate approaches for acquisition, development, and retention. So uh, uh, that's what I wanted to talk about. Yeah, can you please mute? Anyway, okay. Now let's go over the entire last 6 sessions briefly, just to summarize and wrapping up all the things which we discussed. We started off with the business strategy, and I think business strategy, what we try to understand, how do we think strategically, because all managers in the organization, they are supposed to think strategically for the company. And for strategic thinking, there are 3 questions which we want to do. Where do we want to go? What is the destination? What is our goal? And in the business context, what kind of leadership position our company should attain? What is the vision? What is the mission? What are the objectives and all that? And where are we now? That is the second question. What is our current situation? And we talked about our internal and external environment. And then how do we get there? So that is really the strategy part of the thing. So where do we want to go was the core purpose, mission, vision, values, and objectives, which is simple. Then we talk about external environment. In external environment,
so can you go back the slide just once?
Yeah.
There's one slide.
This one?
This was the last first one.
Before that.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. Yes, the next one, yeah.
Next one is about where do you want to go. So that is talking about the destination. Each study, like even all strategies, they should know where you want. For example, if you're doing HR strategy, you should know what is the business objective, and all your strategy will be aligned, will be pointing towards that goal. This is what we want to achieve. Okay, so this is and second question is, where are we now? And in the business context, when you talk about business strategy, we have to study our external environment. In external environment, we saw that there are 3 layers outside the organization: macro environment, in middle layer is industry, and then comes the closest, which is competitors. Competitors are the closest. So we studied the macro environment in terms of a particular tool called PESTEL. So PESTEL is political, environmental, social, technological, and legal, and all those things, various sub environments in the macro environment. We have to see how they are impacting our business, how they are impacting, and how they're likely to impact in the future. So that is something we need to understand. Second is industry environment. Industry environment means our competitors, our suppliers, our buyers and suppliers, and the competitors. Yeah, any question? So this here we discuss Porter's 5 forces, which is a very important tool to understand what are the forces, industry forces, which are acting on our company, because they can either provide us a lot of opportunities to do business, or they can be threatening. And similarly, suppliers also put pressure. Similarly, buyers also put pressure. So idea here is that we must be able to very clear about what are the forces which are acting. And on the basis of that, it will help us in formulating the strategy. And third layer was competitors analysis. We should identify who are the most direct competitor of us, and then know a lot more about them as to how they're going to respond, what are their strategy, and so on, in order to really have a counter strategy ready for this thing. Then we looked at another part is the internal environment. An internal environment is something called resources. We have two types of resources, tangible or intangible. And we looked at intangibles are much more valuable because they are difficult to acquire. It takes time to acquire, like brand, like goodwill, and so on and so forth. The capability, very strong capability, is intangible, which is very difficult to acquire. So they are much more valuable. Capabilities, and then core competency and distinctive competency. These are some things which are internal, this thing. And then we looked at the business, what a business, each business is, this objective is to have a competitive advantage over the rivals. And the idea is that if your profitability is greater than the all the firms in the industry, then you have a competitive advantage. And we try to understand competitive advantage in three. Remember this figure that there are three basic factors. One is the utility or value, second is price, and third is cost. And we looked at that we can have competitive advantage if we can reduce the cost. Okay, if you can reduce the cost, because the profit increases. If you reduce the cost, profit increases. P minus C, which is the profit, increases. So that's one way of getting competitive advantage. So that's called cost advantage. Second is, if we can improve the utility of our product or services in the eyes of customer. If customer feels that this product has got some additional features or service which has got additional features for which he is ready to pay you premium price, and that is again will be able to give you higher profit. And this is called differentiation advantage. So if you want, and each business wants competitive advantage, right? So if you want competitive advantage, so there are two ways of this thing. One is a cost leadership. That means you start having a lower cost. Differentiation is product leadership. Your product or feature of services will have a better feature. So that is a product leadership. Or third is you focus only on a small segment of the entire market. You don't cater to the entire market. And remember this chart which we said that this first circle is broad market, but you go for the last circle, which is one segment or the. So idea is that you want to be customer intimacy is the objective here. You want to really look after your customers' preferences because they have some special requirements. So you try to lure them to your product services by giving them some specific features in that particular segment. So based on these three, what we looked at is 2x2 matrix, where depending on the competitive advantage which you are driving from lower cost or from differentiation, and here it is the competitive scope, either the broad market or the narrow scope, which is one segment or the. So this is called cost leadership. This is differentiation, and this particular thing is focused. And in a focused strategy also, you can have, for that particular segment, you can have lowest cost, or you can have a differentiation. These are the 4 strategies, and we discussed a number of examples of this strategy. Finally, we also looked at that each organization will have, and this is what we discussed about a business level.
Sir, just a minute, Somen here.
Yeah.
I have just one question, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. In distinctive competence, you have shown in your PPT there, second number was attractive potential for being a cornerstone of a strategy. Attractive potential for being a cornerstone of a strategy. Please explain this, sir. I am not able to understand.
Yeah. See, this distinctive competencies, One is a core competency. Core competency is on what you base your business strategy. Okay, so that's a core competency. However, if you improve your core competency to that level that all your rivals cannot achieve, do not have that level of competency, you start calling it distinctive competency. So if your organization is able to have a distinctive competency, for example, Apple has got a distinctive competency of coming out with the innovative products, one after the another in quick succession. So that competency is distinctive competency, and none of the Apple's rivals have got that. And that probably is that distinct competency give them not only competitive advantage, but it will give them a sustained competitive advantage. So that is the difference between the distinctive competency and competencies.
So actually, I wanted to know what is the meaning of this word, cornerstone of a strategy.
Cornerstone means that is the major fulcrum. The whole strategy would be centering around, would be that particular competency. That means cornerstone means that it's really on this basis, on that competency basis, you have developed the entire business strategy. That is where cornerstone means the crux, the core part of it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Central idea or critical idea.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Okay. Now we talked about a business level strategy. We didn't talk much about the corporate level strategy because that's not part of your course. Business level strategy, but each business level, and then we have a next level is a functional level strategy. Functional level strategy, as I explained, that all these functional level strategies will be aiming towards meeting the business level strategy. Okay. Here we went on a HR function, HR strategy we talked about. Now, HR strategy is primarily all people-related approaches, people-related activities. That means HR is a key resource in a company, and whatever strategies which you, whatever activity you do for the HR, this key resource, the people related, that is the HR strategy. But it has to, as I said earlier also, and I cannot overemphasize that its main purpose of the HR strategy is to meet the whatever is required for the competitive advantage of the company, because competitive advantage is something which organization will be looking for, because competitive advantage meets the business objectives and all that. So all the HR strategy should be aligned to the business strategy, business goals, business purpose and all that. So that is where I think we mentioned, but the important part of the HR strategy, besides being aligned to the business strategy, is that it also has to be aligned with the structural and cultural context. So I think that's where the three circles which are there. So HR approaches and the context, it has to be available. Right. So how do you build HR strategy? Number one is to understand what is the business strategy and what are the business challenges, HR related challenges which are there for meeting the business strategy, for executing business strategy, and what are the critical functions. So these are some things which are very important to understand before you start looking at them. And so then you identify how people must be able to contribute to this thing. And so we had quite a detailed discussion on the developing business HR strategy. And then ultimately we design and we identify our HR strategy in such a manner that it is aligned with the cultural and structural context. And then ultimately we implement those strategy. What is another thing which is important is have a matrix of HR strategy. That means you should be able to, all the time, you should be able to measure how well your HR strategy is serving its purpose, or how well it is helping the business strategy. And that is the metrics which is important, because based on the metrics, you will be able to tweak the designing of your HR strategy, maybe. And so this is a feedback loop which you will be able to have with this thing. So ultimately, I remember this start, then we start with company strategy, identify people related challenges and critical functions, and then work out whatever is this static HR topics and all that which are there. And then, and no two organizations will have the same HR strategy, because each organization would have a different business strategy and different cultural and structural context. So you will find no two organizations have the same strategy. But what is important is the alignment with the structural and the cultural context. And then components are very much there. I mean, human resource planning, recruitment selection, training development, performance management, and all these things which are okay. So
Sorry, can we relate core competencies with structural strategy? With structure, core competencies of the organizations, can we relate to the structure of the organization?
Yeah. If the structure is highly flat, for example, if the structure is very flat, then the HR strategy will have different focus on various components. If it is very tall, where a lot of layers are there, then it will have a different context. So so that is one, of course, is the business strategy. And again, depending on the culture, and we talked about culture means if it's an authoritative or participative culture, if the organization is more towards X theory or Y theory and all that. And we discussed number of points where the organization lies, and based on that, your HR intervention in the strategy will be worked out. Similar, for example, let me just tell you how business strategy, cost leadership, for example. Cost leadership means economies of scale, low cost manufacturing, very basically standard products, high volume. And here the HR strategy will be operational efficiency will be the focus, inexpensive manpower, and cost cutting measures will be the most valuable contribution of the people, and performance metrics will be cost and volume, all these things. If it happens to be a differentiation strategy, then it will be customized product leadership is the main this thing. And then HR strategy will also be different. You will have more expert manpower, more talent focus, and performance metrics will also be different, and so on. So that is where I think, depending on the strategy. And similarly, again, we had a good amount of discussion on the cultural aspects, or the uh, structural aspects which are going to be taken care of. Last in the fifth session, I think we discussed about a training strategy. Training strategy is primarily something which provides the tools required to build the competencies that an organization requires. Okay, so that is something which is uh, idea again here is that you are building those competencies which are required for having a strong competitive advantage. Okay, so again, look at the business side is important. Business purpose, business objective, business strategy. These are the important things in order to work out a good, effective training strategy. So that is something which is important. And perquisites of this thing, again, as I was telling you, it has to be aligned with the organization purpose and competitive advantage, and also aligned to the business strategy. cultural context and structural context. So remember this chart which we have. The company strategy is the main thing. Always, whenever you start thinking about training strategy, you identify what is the purpose, goals, competitive advantage, and so on. So business strategy is the basic basis on the and then competency related challenges. What are the challenges? Where the gaps are? And so this thing, you identify your strategic business objectives when you talk about the company strategy. Also, and we looked at that when you say business objectives, you must be able to understand what are the goals, hard goals like profit, increased revenue, productivity, as well as soft goals, maybe brand, customer experience, culture. And also then what are the results required? Idea is that goals are clear, but what are the results required? And then, for example, if your increased revenue is the objective, then you want to have higher sales. And if your customer satisfaction is the objective, then you want less and less customer complaints which are there. So that is something which is required. Then identify the roles which can help you improve these performance results. And the roles means that you can have, like, for example, the sales team will have to be having certain competency in order to increase sales. So you can start thinking of what sales executives, what competency they should have. Similarly, all the support team which is helping the customer experience, what are the competencies, what are the capabilities they should have in order to improve the customer experience. And based on this, you have to evaluate the gaps. In the sales people, for example, what is the gap? What kind of a competency they should have. Now you must evaluate where they fall short, and based on that, you will have your training goals, learning goals for them. Okay. But the idea, the one thing we emphasize is that all these gaps, or let's say, what are the goals, what are the objectives of training, that should be communicated to the people, so that they understand why they are undergoing that training and all. So that is important. So design and develop training for achieving those learning objects. And here we also talked about certain supportive activities and resources, training policies, training team, infrastructure required, software, metrics, and of course reviews with this thing. So in operationalizing the strategy, we have 4 steps. Need analysis, that means you identify whether need is for the entire organization or for the department as a group or the individual. So you identify training needs in these 3 for each individual or for each group, and for the company as a whole. If some company-wide initiative you're taking, supposing you're introducing ERP, for example, you have to have a company-wide some training on ERP or something. So need analysis, and which is to be done periodically in order to understand that you need, you're identifying the correct needs, this thing. And second is design based on that, and then operation, where you have a total operationalizing the and evaluation. Evaluation means how effective your training strategy has been implemented, and based on the feedback, then you further tweak your design and hone it in order to ensure that you get the good results on this thing. So that's let me pause for a minute and see any questions on business strategy, HR strategy, or training strategy.
Sir, Somen here. I have one question. Actually, I want to get it clear. You have taught us, sir, solution or problems as the starting point. You have given the model. First model was the solution, design, context, and problems. Another was problem, context, solution, and design. Please explain it, sir.
No. There, that in that session, I said that there are two ways organizations do that.
Yeah.
One is they start with the solution. Sometimes in HR department, people say, okay, our company, I think we need we need to uh, we need to have a employee survey solution. If some people have come to know that in some other organizations some surveys are going on, employee survey, so they come and they talk about it in their organization and say, okay, so solution is employee survey, and based on that everybody says, okay, employee survey is a nice thing to have and all that, and then based on survey then they start working on what is to be done. Because survey is the main objective. That is the main objective. Ultimately, they work on it. What I mentioned is that's not the way one should be doing. One should be able to look at the problem first and look at what is the problem, and based on that work out. And if your problem is that people are not happy, and people or let's say their satisfaction level is low and all that, and then you may come to the solution of employee survey, and then based on employee survey then you come out and say, identify why people are not happy, and then take solution. So these are the two approaches. My idea of showing that slide was that we should really start from the problem and not from the solution itself.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Number of times some HR head or let's say senior people in HR, just saying they attend some seminar conferences, and in the seminar somebody has talked about a very different kind of a performance management system in their company. Okay, so and they like it, they like the whole this thing, and it's okay. Now they come back to the organization and say, okay, this is the way we will also do the performance management. And so all the performance appraisal system gets changed. They say, okay, we'll start. And so, but this is not the way again, because if you just copy the same performance management and implement in your organization, it may not give you the same results which that organization get. So it has to be really aligned with your own organization's culture, practices, systems, and all that, whatever is there, and then only should be able to design. So idea was that the thing should be from inside out rather than outside in. However, even if you are taking some good as a benchmarking, somebody has done very well, and so but that benchmark solution has to be adopted to your culture and structure and your philosophy, and then only it should be implemented. And so that's my
And thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So ideally, we should identify the problem first, and based on the problem, we should design the. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other question on any of things? Any of the other things which I talked about? Business strategy or HR strategy or training strategy? Okay, let me proceed then. I think towards the end also, if you have some questions by that time, if you know, we can always. So then after the last session, what I discussed was really that no matter how good, how sound a business strategy or HR strategy or training strategy or any functional strategy you have been able to formulate it, you have crafted one of the best strategies of any function or any this thing, but it will not give you fruits unless and until it is implemented very well. So I wanted to make sure that you understand that a second class strategy, if it is implemented in the top class manner, that will give you much better results than a first-class strategy, but not implemented very well. Okay, so implementation is the real crux of the results will come out of the implementation of strategy. Otherwise, it remains in your on the paper only. The business strategy or whatever strategy you work out, that will remain on paper. It brings fruits only when it is strategy. And now, depending on the strategy, you have to really implement. So there is no set formula that how you can implement the strategy. Each, whether it's a marketing strategy or HR strategy or operational strategy, any strategy will be implemented in terms of its own context. Okay, so that is something which we cannot do it here. But then what we discussed in this last session was there are certain key components of implementation which are, if they are available in all the implementation of strategies, the strategies has much more chances of becoming successfully implemented. So we talked about some common success components which are required in executing a strategy process. Okay, so we discussed about 7 of them. Number 1 was building capable organization. It is very important to have a great team. Any strategy, when you are implementing, you should have people to carry out to implement the strategy, and that's a great team. If your business strategy is there, you have to have a great number of people, I mean great talent in your organization in order to implement business strategy. Okay, so this is something very, very important, because every strategy will require certain changes and all that. So you have this thing. Second important thing is you have to have resources, and not only resources, you have to allocate them properly in all strategy critical activities. So whatever the critical activities in that strategy, you have to ensure that your resources are adequately and appropriately allocated to them. So that is very important, because resources normally are always limited. You don't have a huge kitty of resources, so you have to allocate resources. So if you have let's say a group of talented people, you have to allocate talented people to all the critical activities depending on what talent they have and what activities they can do it competently. So that is, and besides that, you have money allocation, equipment, and everything, all the infrastructure, everything allocation should be allocation should be proper.
Sir Somen here, just one question. You had used one word here only, ROC, the return on capital employed.
Yeah.
Just give some light on the same. How we define it? Return on capital employed, yeah. ROC.
Yeah, ROC, return on capital. See, let me talk in the terms of business. Business, when you start a business, you employ certain capital to start the business. Let's say you have employed 10 crores in your business. So you arrange 10 crores from somewhere, either your own pocket or from banks or from shareholders and all that. 10 crores is the capital invested, and that's called capital employed. And out of that 10 crore, now you start doing the business, and ultimately you get a profit of, let's say, 1 crore. So your return on capital is 1 over 10 crore. That means 10%. 10% is on return on capital employed. Now, if you have arranged that capital, which costed you, let's say, supposing you are taken from bank and bank has charged you 12%. The bank has charged you 12% on the capital which they've given you, but you have only earned 10%. That means you are running in loss. So your return on investment should be more on the cost of capital. So that is the point. If you want to, the cost which you incurred for getting that capital, if it is higher than the profit you're getting, that means you are running a loss. If profit is more than the cost of capital, then you're doing well. Okay, so each business tries to get the cost of capital should be as low as possible, so they find out the cheaper sources, and shareholders are something which can give you the capital free, because they only expect dividend which comes from out of profit only. And so the return cost of capital is something which you want, and they want to earn as much profit as possible. So if you are earning if your return on capital is more than the cost of capital, you are doing well. You will probably be surviving. If your return on investment is lower than the cost of capital, then you may not survive. You will go bankrupt very soon. Okay, that is the concept of return on capital. Okay, did I answer your question, Soman?
Yeah, it is answered. I was thinking, as per your explanation, so return on investment or return on capital, you are saying that return on capital employed is equal to total investment?
Yeah, all the capital which is total investment.
So,
yeah.
so here we should consider the finance we have given, all the monetary part, then the infrastructure that were utilized in the everything is considered.
Total amount of investment you have done on a business is capital employed.
Yeah, as we calculate in ROI the total investment, so it is equal to the total investment, I think.
Yeah. So your return on capital employed means all the capital which you have invested, how much profit you are getting. That is return on capital.
Okay.
How much?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So the third component which is important is that when you are implementing strategy, you have to ensure that the policies, systems, procedures which you have in the company are supportive to that strategy. So if they are not supportive, then your strategy will run into a lot of difficulty. So in case they are supportive, that's fine. In case they're not supportive, then you may have to change or tweak or modify your policies and procedures and any other systems and all that. That's important. So that means you have the right number of kind of people, you have the right allocated resources, you have the right policies, and also information systems or operating system also something which is very important, which is possible. And these are the first four items are supposed to be prerequisite again for a successful implementation process. Then comes the motivating part, and we discussed quite a lot on the motivating part, and we said that you can motivate people either through financial schemes, financial rewards, or on the non-monetary rewards also. But it is most important. One of the most important thing is how do we motivate people to execute a strategy well.
Sir, here one more question. Somendra here.
Yeah.
Just one question here. Just please explain, sir, McGregor theory of X and Y, as you already explained. So how it actually imparts in motivating people?
See, McGregor's theory, X and Y. X theory says that the people do not want to work; they are lazy, and for making them work, you'll have to have either a stick or a punishment or something, and that's how you can do it. And so in this case, punishment and a fear is something which they say is the major motivating area. So here it is, that is X theory. Y theory says that the people by nature are they want to work. By nature, they want to work. They want to perform. And so, in case you have in your company, the more of Y kind of people are there, Y kind of management is there. The idea is you try and give them more challenging assignments. You give them better working condition, and because people want to work, they will perform and all that. So that is where the motivating of this part is there. So motivating people to execute strategy well, you need to understand how is your company's culture or value system and all that. So based on that, if your culture and value system is aligned to McGregor's X theory, then one kind of motivation will work. In case of its Y, then another kind of motivation is there. So that
So
is where the
entirely the culture is responsible as far as McGregor concept is concerned.
Yeah. McGregor, the leadership thinking about what do you think about people? In in certain autocratic kind of a culture, the boss is always very tough, and he derives people's performance primarily through the fear,
Fear, yeah.
punishment, and all that.
Yeah.
So that is
Autocratic.
one kind of a culture. Yeah. And we talked about the sixth component as a supportive culture, which is again somewhat linked, but then this is very important. Culture makes all the difference ultimately. And finally, we said that a great strategy execution will take place if the leadership which you are exerting is a inspiring leadership. Inspiring leadership means that you are able to move people to a better performance, and you are creating ownership in the team so that they take responsibility of this thing. You will probably not have the persons who come out with the excuses for delays, and they take responsibility and do this thing. And we talked about that, what is the inspiring leadership is. And so these are the various components, and if these components are available and you are able to do that, the chances of your strategy is going to be very high. So coming back, that if you remember in the very first session of this course, I started the course by asking you one simple question. That was, why do some organizations succeed while others fail? And then during the course, we discuss number of things, that how organizations will be able to succeed. And primarily we discuss that if the business strategy is formulated very well, the organizations is most likely to succeed if it's formulated very well and implemented very well. So this is something which we talked about. Why do some organizations succeed while others fail? And we focused our attention mostly on the organization's business strategy. And we, environment might change very fast and very much, but how we can, based on our business strategy, we will be able to have success in the organizations. And towards the end of this course, because today is the last session, and I would like to give you another question, which I would like you to ponder over whenever this thing, because that is also equally important for us to consider. And that question is, why do some people succeed while others fail? So now this is a question which I'm not expecting answers right now, but you should be able to sort of ponder over and try to identify, why do some people, and because we have seen in our own lives, there are certain people who attain much higher degree of success and some people fail. Huh? Similar case as the organization. So people do that. So the point here, which I'm trying to you to focus on, the key principles of strategic management, which we discussed in the context of business. These same and particularly the answers of these questions, 3 questions, which forced us to do strategic thinking. These are relevant for business, but also relevant for in our life. And particularly in life means career strategy or our life strategy, because these are something which we are highly concerned about. We are concerned about our career, and we are also concerned about life strategy, because this is the only life which we have, and we are here only for a limited period of time on this planet Earth. So whether while leaving this planet Earth, are we having the satisfaction that we have met our life's objective or whatever purpose which we did, we live life well or not? So in the career strategy or life strategy, we can have the same kind of a strategic thinking. Like for example, just to give a certain example about the career strategy, we can apply our the principle of say, what are the goals and values, what do we want from our strategy, okay, um, from our career. So are we seeking wealth, are we seeking power, are we seeking influence, what are, or we are seeking security, or what is it that we want to we are seeking, and what is the environment, huh? So second is where we are, environment, which career offers the best prospects in relation to our goals, what are the career opportunities may relate to work type, what kind of are we going to be a marketing manager, financial analyst, or whatever, or what sector, financial services, manufacturing, public sector, private sector, and so on. And what are the key success factors in these markets? What are the resources and capabilities we have? So we have certain resources, we have certain capabilities, we have some competencies with us, our social and communicative skill, our aptitude, our qualification, experience, our network, our contacts. These are resources which we have. And based on these, we have to work out what type of jobs and what kind of responsibility, and ultimately what do we have wherever we are having gaps between what is required by our goal and our competency, how do we meet that? And based on that, we have to develop our career strategy and implement whatever steps which we think are required for that. So this is something which I think each one of us, we normally do not spend time on our career strategy, and we spend most of the time in our business strategy. So our organization, but I think it's important for us to look at our cash. And similarly, we should also have some time we should spend on our life strategy. What is our life's goal? Life's goal could be number of them. For example, career may be our life's goal, or wealth. Career goal means you want to become maybe a CEO, or let's say top executive, or whatever, top scientist or something like that in by the time we attain the age of 50 or whatever. So that could be our career goal or something. Wealth could be another this thing. We want to amass good amount of wealth so that we live a luxurious life, or let's say we get probably we can give something much better environment, much better living for our family. Health could be another career life goal. We want to remain healthy all the time. We want to avoid diseases and disabilities at all costs, and we want to extend our life health wise. We want to, or we could have our life's goal could be great family, that we want to raise a very good family, a very nice loving family in which we are able to enjoy the love and affection of our near and dear ones. So this could be another one which could be our goal. Or finally, we may also have another passion. Some people have passion of becoming a great musician, or they not becoming that they enjoy music very well, or you enjoy painting very well, or you enjoy photography or travel or whatever, hiking. So everybody has got certain hobbies which give them a lot of pleasure, and that may be a goal, that I want to really go for my this hobby, because this gives me unlimited asim anand, as I say, Asimanam. So life goal could be all of these, and normally life goal is a combination of all this, not just one of these. People would like to have a combination of all these goals. But when we are implementing when we are moving towards our life, we're advancing in our life, we somehow focus on one of the goals, and a lot of us sometimes we focus on, let's say, career. And career means we spend all our resources on career. So we work, let's say, day in day out for this thing. We come back home late and so on. So we can make this particular uh, this particular uh, uh, area very high, because we do a lot more, but then at the cost of family maybe, or at the cost of health, at the cost of hobbies. So we tend to, now this is where the question of allocating resources comes. Our resources consist of primarily three things: the kind of time we have, the effort we have, and you know time, effort, and money, whatever we have. These are some of the resources which we have. And if we put most of the resources on any one of the goals, our star will not be a balanced star. It be spiking on one side or something. So if our uh, goal, if we are only going for wealth, money and money and money, then our career might get hurt, our family might get hurt, or our hobbies. Similarly, if health is there, so the idea is that we have to have a balanced utilization of our time, energy, and money, all these things, and then only we will be able to have a very satisfactory life, achievement of our life goal, whatever we do. And I think this is another aspect which I thought you should be able to think whenever you are free about it, because something, if you a lot of people think about these things only towards the end of their career, or maybe when in their retired life. Okay, I should have done this, I should have done that, or I focused too much on this. So when you have time right now, when you are young, and this thing, you have a long way to go. If you are able to think about all these aspects, you will develop your life strategy, which is highly balanced. And whenever you are signing off from this planet Earth, you probably will have much more satisfaction of living your life well, because you have achieved your life goals ultimately. So this is something which I wish that you use the strategic management, strategic thinking principles in your career as well as life as well, besides using it for your business strategy. So
Now,
that comes towards end. Yeah, tell me, any questions?
no, sir, not a question. I have been doing a research on this for 4 years now.
Yeah, yeah,
And
good, good.
no, I have come to, at least I have not come to a conclusion, but I have,
Hmm,
in all these 4 years, I have marked one thing that,
hmm,
all of these different factors or areas, if you say, of life,
hmm,
have to
hmm.
do ultimately with the happiness.
Yeah, but see, if your star is very well balanced, I think you will be very happy. Happiness comes from each of these five corners. Happiness comes from good career, good amount of wealth, good health, hobbies. If any of these things is not there, you will not be happy. Happy is a balanced way of all these five things, five factors. Any factor missing will make you unhappy. If your family is missing, family is not satisfied, then also you will not be happy. Career alone will not make you happy. Along with the career, you will have to have good health, you'll have to have at least good family, and career might give you good wealth, all right. But so I think it's a balanced thing which gives you happiness. Ultimately, center of the star is happiness. Happiness is at the center of the star here. So happiness is
Yes.
required, but happiness comes from all these five factors.
Yes, sir, complete.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, happiness must be specific, because if we talk about career, so definitely we have to be specific in career what we want to do. Yeah, what we want to achieve. Yeah, well, how much we want to achieve. Like health, what we would be like that. So it must be specific if we want. If we talk about happiness.
You have to make a strategy for each goal, which I mentioned here. Make a strategy for each goal, and then allocate resources appropriately,
Right.
so that you have a balanced kind of a thing. So this is, I think about it. I'm just giving some food for thought
Yeah,
for
sir.
you.
Very
And
good.
yeah. So any other question which you have?
So it's not a question, but I would just like to take you back. You did share a wonderful link about how will you measure your life by Christensen. So
Yes.
it was a beautiful
Yeah,
topic.
I think I've been inspired by that Clayton Christensen only, in order to work out some sort of a broad kind of a model which I'm presenting to you. So it is something, that's what he said. He said that normally strategic thinking, strategic concepts and principles, you should use it for your life also, and not just for your business, because that's where he found that most of the people, they don't talk don't think on these lines. Yeah, that's right. Your observation is very clear, very
Yes, sir.
good
Thank you.
observation. Yeah. Any question, any other question we have?
So could you please move the slide to 34?
uh Tell me what is the, I don't know which one, 34, but give me the question, please. Show me the question,
Yeah,
which
it's
is.
like sir, after.
34 is career strategy, I guess.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
okay,
career
okay, okay.
strategy, right.
Okay. Tell me about career study. Yeah,
Okay.
this what?
So there is no questions that I want to see that slide,
Yeah,
firstly.
yeah.
And secondly, I would really like to thank you for presenting this life strategy part, which is very,
Yeah.
very important for us. And I really
Very
feel
important.
that the way that you have presented it, it's very great. We also use this concept in NLP as well, wherein we
Okay,
use
okay.
wheel of life as a diagram, and we measure through different questions these ways.
Yeah.
And to specifically, sir, I would like to say this thing to you, that nobody can say it until and unless you believe in it. So I really believe that you do follow certain things like this, and that is how you are able to
I,
present
I,
it.
I hope I am able to do something on this, and but only thing, I read about these things much later in life. Maybe I was, I think when I was at the age of 50, 55 or something, then only. I want you people, probably you are much younger than me, you people to start thinking on this point much earlier, so that you have more time to implement that life strategy. Number of us, and I wish that when you graduate from a college, that time you start understanding all these things. And in my all my MBA courses classes, I try and talk to the MBA students and tell them about these things. So if you can, as early as you can think about these things, probably you will have more time available in your life to meet your life goal. So that's a good point which you are raising. Try to do it as early as, don't defer these thinking on these things much later in the part of, like, okay, abhi kya jaldi hai or something, or I can do it when I'm this, I'm that. So don't do that. Try and start thinking about this, because you will then gain a lot of time to implement your strategy. So any other question which you have? Well, if another question is there, then wish you a good luck in formulation and execution of all your strategies. And I really wish you good luck and all the best in life.
Thank you, sir.
And
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
so
All
much,
the best.
sir. Thanks a
All the
lot.
best.
Thank you.
All the
On,
best to you. This is the
Thank you,
last
sir.
session. Yeah.
on behalf of all the students, I would like to
Yeah.
thank you very much, and on my behalf, that you agreed to take this again, and it has been very good, Wonderful.
Thanks,
You
Kaushal.
know.
Thank you, Kaushal. It has been really pleasure interacting with the people. I wish I could have not online, and I could probably face to face. I could meet these people, but I think I enjoyed this
Yeah.
delivering 7 sessions to these
And
people.
these guidance that you have given in today's session, you know, the people will remember, and I think when they act on
I
it,